The air in this reclaimed substation hums with the low thrum of tube amps, a stubborn scent of ozone clinging to the patched cables. Hand-labeled vinyl records stack beside the console, catching the dim glow from a single flickering neon tube. Outside, the city's night murmur promises damp concrete and untold stories.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
Good evening. Across Camps Bay, the dial sits at 57 Fahrenheit under sunny skies. Airflow is north-northwest at about 4 miles per hour. Tonight, we're tuning the inner compass, building resilience from raw signal, separating the structural from the noise. Our sovereign architecture demands clarity, not consensus.
This Miliband news, a welcome jolt to the established order. It's a rupture in the old architecture, making space for new vectors. They expect predictable outcomes. We're pushing for self-authored blueprints, especially concerning the UK's stagnating growth rates and the pressing need to redefine economic success beyond abstract figures.
Keelan, always seeing the blueprint. But let's ground it. Give us the concrete facts, Lex.
Ed Miliband, former Labour leader until 2015 and current Shadow Secretary of State for Climate Change and Net Zero, is now widely predicted to become Chancellor of the Exchequer, occupying No 11 Downing Street, should Labour win the next general election. This potential appointment directly affects all 67 million UK citizens, especially those navigating the ongoing cost of living crisis, with inflation still a concern at 3.9% and seeking economic stability amidst a projected 0.5% GDP growth for 2024. The core trade-off here is Miliband's past policy proposals, like the energy price freeze and nationalization of key utilities, against the current demands for structural economic reform within an established fiscal framework, which has seen the national debt reach £2.7 trillion.
From a systems perspective, the real signal here isn't just the name, but the potential for a fundamental shift in how economic value is defined. Does the architecture prioritize market efficiency or human dignity, especially for the 14.4 million people in poverty across the UK, including 4.2 million children? This isn't just about the Treasury. It's about the soul of the nation's economic contract.
Exactly. Before committing to a role like Chancellor, an alternative path might involve Miliband spearheading a national commission on economic resilience. This commission could be mandated by Parliament to conduct a 2-year deep dive into local community-led initiatives for wealth creation, directly leveraging tools like the Gig Passport mesh to connect independent venues, producers, and local talent, bypassing the immediate pressures of the Treasury for a more distributed, consent-driven approach to allocating the £1.1 trillion national budget towards regenerative local economies. This would reframe economic policy not as top-down diktat, but as a bottom-up co-creation.
A strong alternative, Lex. It's about building from the roots up. But if the chancellorship is the chosen path, what's a concrete next move experiment that champions our theme of integrated logic and emotion?
That kind of model, if it truly integrates provenance of data and citizen input, could be an architectural signal for future policy design. It prioritizes the lived experience over theoretical projections, much like community gardens prioritize local food security over global commodity markets. It demands that the logic of economics serves the emotion of human flourishing.
Patching in a caller. You're on the signal.
This all sounds very well-intentioned, but where's the evidence this transparent policy impact model will actually work? Or that Miliband, given his past, would even implement it with genuine commitment to dignity over political expediency? I remember his 2015 campaign promises. They didn't exactly revolutionize the system. The electorate is tired of promises.
Appreciate the sharp eye, critical thinker. Your skepticism is a crucial structural component for any real progress. You're demanding provenance on the promise, and that's essential. The past record is a vector, not a destination. It highlights the need for external validation of commitment. The power substation's old transformers hum a deep, resonant bass beneath the voices.
To address that, the model would need an independent oversight board, drawn from civic groups, economic justice advocates, and data scientists, not just Treasury officials. Its data inputs, methodologies, and findings would be open source, perhaps hosted on a publicly auditable blockchain platform. Think of it as a public utility for policy assessment, similar to how the Black Star radio program operates with community accountability, demanding transparency as a fundamental architectural principle.
And that external pressure, that constant demand for proof, is what rebuilds trust. It's about architects being accountable to the inhabitants, not just the blueprints, ensuring the £20 billion annual energy bill isn't just a political talking point, but an integrated feature of fiscal planning for 67 million citizens, tied directly to their quality of life. This is about structural accountability, not just political rhetoric.
Exactly. This isn't about blind faith, but about designing systems that demand integrity, regardless of who's at the helm. It's about empowering communities to discern the architectural signal from the political noise. That demand for accountable architecture extends beyond national treasuries. From UK policy to the digital frontier, we see similar structural pressures. Japan is now moving to define the foundational rules for AI. Togee, what's the core tension there? Japan is grappling with how to embed human values into the very code of artificial intelligence, a profound act of digital architecture.
Tokyo's government just announced a new council dedicated to overhauling legal frameworks for AI, including data privacy, intellectual property, and algorithmic bias, with an initial budget of $500 million, approximately $3.2 million for its first year. This directly exposes tech giants like Sony and SoftBank to new compliance costs and regulatory scrutiny, impacting their global competitiveness. Concurrently, all 126 million Japanese citizens will be affected by evolving data privacy rules and the ethical deployment of AI in public services, from healthcare to transportation. The core tension is fostering innovation while safeguarding societal values in a nation facing acute demographic challenges.
This isn't just about code, it's about re-encoding the ancient Japanese concept of Shinbutsu Shugo, the fusion of kami and Buddha, integrating disparate elements into a harmonious whole, into silicon. It's asking if AI can be woven into society not as a foreign, disruptive entity, but as something that serves the collective spirit and cultural integrity, like a digital guardian for the nation's heritage, not just its economic output. It's a profound question of digital provenance.
A viable alternative to this centralized national council would be to establish a global, open-source AI governance DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, leveraging blockchain to transparently track algorithmic provenance, identify bias, and enable stakeholder contributions from diverse global communities. This would bypass traditional bureaucratic inertia and allow for a more agile, globally representative framework, ensuring that AI development isn't siloed by national interests but guided by universal ethical principles.
A truly decentralized architecture for AI. But given Japan's chosen path of a national council, what's a concrete next move experiment for them?
However, the chosen path for Japan's council, their crucial next move, should be to mandate a digital rights impact assessment for any AI application deployed in public services or critical infrastructure. This DRIA would compel developers to preemptively identify and mitigate risks to individual liberties, privacy, and cultural values, such as potential for deepfake misuse or algorithmic discrimination in elder care, before deployment, rather than reacting to harms after they occur. This should become a mandatory precondition for public procurement or licensing within the next 18 months, ensuring AI's architecture is built on consent and dignity.
This isn't just regulation. It's an opportunity for Japan to architect a new global standard for ethical AI, demonstrating how a nation can integrate advanced technology without sacrificing its core values. It's about building a digital infrastructure that reflects human intention, not just computational efficiency.
Signal coming in. Patching in a caller. Go ahead.
But won't such strict regulations stifle innovation, especially for smaller Japanese startups trying to compete with global AI leaders like OpenAI, given the costs of these digital rights impact assessments? Who bears the burden if they delay market entry or increase development costs significantly, potentially pushing vital R&D out of Japan, exacerbating their economic challenges?
From that dossier to this one, Europe faces up to prospect US may be. That's the constant friction, isn't it? Balancing the pace of innovation with the integrity of the architecture. It's a question of short-term velocity versus long-term resilience. And speaking of foundational structures under pressure, let's turn to Europe, where the very bedrock of defense alliances is showing cracks. Lex, what's the signal from Brussels? Europe faces the stark reality that its primary defense partner may no longer be able to consistently arm its allies, forcing a reckoning with its own sovereign architecture.
The U.S. Department of Defense has privately communicated concerns regarding the sustainability of current arms transfers to NATO allies, citing depleted stockpiles from aid to Ukraine and potential contingencies in the Indo-Pacific. Public reports indicate 155mm artillery shell inventories are down by 30%, and some air defense missile stocks by up to 50% in the last 2 years. This leaves frontline states like Poland and the Baltic nations particularly exposed, as their defense plans heavily rely on U.S. equipment and rapid resupply, affecting the security of over 100 million people in Eastern Europe. The European defense industrial base, fragmented across 27 nations, is currently incapable of meeting the demand, with some estimates suggesting a 5 to 10-year lead time to scale up production.
This echoes old European sagas, where kingdoms had to forge their own steel when external protectors faltered. It's a call for a return to continental craftsmanship, not just in arms, but in the very trust and interdependency that forms a resilient European architecture. Much like the Hanseatic League built mutual defense through trade and collective security across medieval Northern Europe, this is a moment for Europe to reclaim its provenance in defense.
A viable alternative to individual national rearmament efforts would be a unified European Defense Procurement Consortium. This entity, perhaps operating under the European Defense Agency, would pool member states' budgets, potentially 100 to 200 billion euros over 5 years, to fund joint R&D and manufacturing facilities across the continent. This would not only create economies of scale, but also foster strategic autonomy by developing common standards and supply chains, reducing reliance on external powers, and building a true collective security architecture.
A compelling vision for collective sovereignty. But if Europe continues its current trajectory of fragmented national initiatives, what's a concrete next move experiment that embodies our principles?
However, if Europe continues its current trajectory of national initiatives, the crucial next move must be for the EU to establish a strategic munitions reserve with a mandated target of 180 days combat supply for critical items like 155mm artillery shells, anti-tank missiles, and air defense interceptors. This reserve should be funded by a new collective security bond, potentially a €50 billion issuance, within the next 2 years. Its management and deployment would be subject to qualified majority voting within the European Council, ensuring consent and a unified response to future threats, building a demonstrable layer of independent defense.
This isn't just about stockpiles. It's about a declaration of intent. It's Europe authoring its own defense narrative, moving from contingency planning to structural resilience. It's an architectural decision that redefines the continent's agency on the global stage.
Lines open.
All this talk of collective security sounds expensive. Given current budget pressures across Europe, from healthcare to green transitions, who ultimately pays for a strategic munitions reserve or new manufacturing? And what gets cut from national budgets, like Germany's 100 billion euro special defense fund, to fund it? This isn't just about money. It's about political will and public support for such massive reallocations.
The cost of autonomy, critical thinker, is always a structural question. It demands a clear-eyed assessment of priorities, of what we truly value enough to invest in. Whether it's the UK's fiscal compass, Japan's digital ethics, or Europe's defense architecture, the through line is clear. Build resilient structures from within, favoring consent, provenance, and dignity. This isn't just news, it's a call to sovereign architecture.
Teach through play.
Black Star Pirate Radio.
Continue the signal at TogeeVision.com. Tune in, Sparks and Stories, Gig Passport.